The leopard swam into the boat begging for help. When everyone knew the cause, they were shocked. The river, calm and reflective under the fading light, suddenly churned. A splash broke the stillness, sending ripples across the water, and a large, shadowed figure emerged from the misty bank. At first, the men on the shore thought it was an animal, perhaps a deer or some stray creature, but as the shape drew closer, there was no mistaking it, a leopard. Its golden coat, slick with water, was struggling to stay afloat. Its movements were frantic, legs kicking in the air in unnatural rhythm, as though it had been trapped in the current for too long. Its eyes, wide and filled with terror, met the men's gaze, but there was no instinct to flee. The animal was exhausted. It seemed confused, weak, and far from its typical graceful self. The fishermen, who had grown used to the wild rhythms of the river, were startled by the sight. One man, older than the rest, recognized the rare visitor. The leopard's deep, ragged breathing sent a chill through him. Something was wrong. Why would it be here? He whispered, his voice heavy with concern. The younger men, still unsure, rushed into their small wooden boat and began rowing toward the creature. The water, once calm, now seemed charged with an electric tension as the boat crept forward. The leopard's movements were becoming slower, as if the energy was draining from its very bones. As the boat neared, the leopard did not try to flee, nor did it show the typical aggression one might expect from a wild animal in distress. Instead, it turned its head weakly toward them, its body floating lifelessly, no longer able to fight the current. For a moment, it seemed like the animal had surrendered to the river, as if it knew there was no escape. The fisherman paused, unsure of what to do. The older man, with his weathered face, felt the gravity of the moment. He knew they could not let the creature drown. Slowly and carefully, they extended a rope to the leopard. The boat swayed gently as the animal, still clinging to the edge of the boat, began to inch closer. There was no roar, no wild thrashing, just a quiet desperation in the way the leopard clung to the boat's side. Without warning, the creature lifted its front legs and slowly climbed into the boat. Its paws were heavy, its body shaking with exhaustion. It did not struggle or swipe, but simply found its place next to the fisherman. The boat rocked under its weight as the animal curled into a ball, its breathing still shallow but steady. A few moments passed in quiet. The men, unsure of how to respond, exchanged glances. There was no threat here, just a creature in need of help. In the fading light, the leopard's golden eyes blinked slowly. It was alive, but just barely. The fishermen silently paddled back to shore, the weight of the moment settling over them. Something in the animal's stillness, its silent surrender, told them the story they had yet to fully understand. The leopard, once the predator of the forest, now lay in the boat as a wounded soul seeking refuge. And as the river calmed again, the fishermen's hearts grew heavy with the realization that the creature's troubles were just beginning. Back on shore, the boat came to a soft stop against the muddy bank, the leopard still lying motionless in the boat. The fishermen remained silent, careful not to disturb the fragile moment. The older man, his hands trembling slightly, stepped forward. He knelt beside the animal, his weathered fingers brushing lightly over the leopard's damp fur. The cat's body was warm, but its breath was shallow, and it seemed barely conscious of its surroundings. "Careful," the younger fisherman said quietly, but his voice held more curiosity than concern. They had never seen a leopard so close, let alone one in such a state. The older man nodded, his eyes focused on the animal's legs. They were thin and trembling, not from fear but from exhaustion. As his hand traced the curve of the leopard's body, he noticed something more. A faint, jagged line running across the cat's flank, half hidden by its matted coat. It looked like a wound, one that had been inflicted some time ago. The skin was swollen, bruised, and raw. The older fisherman stood up slowly, his gaze meeting that of the others. "It's hurt," he murmured. "But this isn't the river's doing. This is something else." The men exchanged looks. They had all known the wild, understood its dangers, but they had never seen a predator so broken, so beaten. With great care, they lifted the leopard from the boat and onto a makeshift bed of dry grass near their huts. It was a slow, deliberate process as they tried not to further harm the fragile animal. The leopard let out a quiet moan, its head still resting against the earth, but there was no thrashing, no resistance. It simply lay there, accepting the help. One of the younger men, still unsure of the right approach, leaned down to whisper, "What happened to you, old friend?" His words were soft, not expecting an answer, but in the quiet, something unspoken passed between them. For a few moments they stood still, the men watching the leopard. There was an air of respect in their silence. The creature's eyes flickered open again, its gaze turning toward them. The men froze, not wanting to break the delicate connection. The older fisherman crouched beside the leopard once more, his hands now gentler, more thoughtful. He whispered, "We'll help you, but you need to tell us what's wrong." The words were not necessary. There was a softness in the leopard's eyes, a recognition that the humans were not here to harm, but to help. Slowly, the men began to move around the animal, finding clean cloths, water, and simple herbs to ease its suffering. The younger man gently cleaned the wound on the leopard's side, his heart heavy with the realization that the animal had been injured long before it had reached the river. It was a deep gash, likely from a trap, a hidden snare set by poachers, or perhaps some violent altercation with another animal. But there was something more haunting in the leopard's eyes, something that spoke of isolation, of a battle that had been fought alone. With each tender movement, the bond between the animal and its helpers deepened. The leopard did not resist their touch. Instead, it lay still, breathing a little easier with each stroke. Its body was heavy, but it was no longer fighting the pain. It had surrendered. As the night grew darker, the sounds of the forest seemed to grow quieter. The only noises that could be heard were the soft rustle of the men's hands, the slow, steady breathing of the leopard, and the occasional distant call of other wild creatures. The moon hung high in the sky, casting a pale light over the scene. The men knew they could not fully heal the leopard, but they also knew that they had done something important, something that spoke of compassion, of respect for the wild, and of a shared understanding that ran deeper than words. For now, all they could do was wait. As dawn broke, the leopard stirred, its body now steadier, stronger. The men had cared for it through the night, offering what little they could, and the creature's recovery was visible. The once fragile body stood tall now, its movements slow but purposeful. The wound was still there, but the energy of the animal had shifted. The older fisherman, watching from a distance, said softly, "It's time." The younger man nodded, knowing what was coming. The leopard, after a long pause, lifted its head and slowly stood, its legs trembling but firm. It looked at the men, a quiet understanding in its eyes, before it began walking toward the forest. With each step, the leopard grew stronger, its body moving more fluidly as it neared the edge of the grass. The men, standing silently, watched as the animal turned and melted into the trees. There were no goodbyes, no final gestures, just the soft rustling of leaves and the fading sound of its footsteps. The older man whispered, "Go on, friend." They had helped, and now it was time for the leopard to reclaim its place in the wild. The men stood there, letting the moment pass in quiet reverence. The world around them moved on, but they carried the memory of the animal's trust, a trust that had been given and quietly returned.